Stop letting your feelings bankrupt your future. Right now, your mind is a target. Every single day, people, media, and your own unchecked insecurities are hijacking your nervous system to control your choices. But that ends today. Welcome to the Rational Matrix. This is your cognitive firewall. It is a ruthless, unforgiving system designed to identify, isolate, and neutralize emotional manipulation before it ever infects your decisions. You are no longer a victim of how you feel. You are the architect of what you do. Chapter 1. The Emotion Illusion. Why your feelings are lying to you. Listen to me closely. The greatest lie you were ever told is that your feelings matter. They don't. Your feelings are not a compass. They are not a crystal ball, and they are certainly not the objective truth. Your feelings are liars. They are biochemical illusions designed to trick you into playing small, acting impulsively, and abandoning your logic. You have spent your entire life believing that if you feel something strongly, it must be real. That ends right now. From this second forward, you must burn this core principle into your mind. Emotions are raw data, not directives. I will say it again so you don't forget it. Emotions are raw data, not directives. Let's break down the machine. Look inside your skull. The brain you operate with every single day is not a modern logical supercomputer. It is a piece of outdated evolutionary software. It was programmed millions of years ago for one singular, desperate purpose: prehistoric survival. It was built for the jungle. It was built for a brutal, unforgiving world where a snapped twig meant a predator was about to tear you apart. In that ancient reality, paranoia kept you alive. Fear kept you breathing. Panic was a highly effective, necessary survival mechanism. But look around you. You don't live in the jungle anymore. You live in a modern, complex, highly structured reality. And yet, you are still running that exact same prehistoric software. This is why you are failing. This is why you are exhausted. Consider the difference in the stimuli. Imagine a saber-toothed tiger stepping out of the brush directly in front of you. What happens? Your heart pounds against your ribs, your palms sweat, cortisol and adrenaline instantly flood your bloodstream. You run. That is biological panic doing exactly what it was designed to do. Now, fast forward to today. You are sitting safely at your desk in a climate-controlled room. Your phone buzzes. It's a late-night email from your boss, and the subject line simply says, "We need to talk tomorrow." What happens? Your heart pounds, your palms sweat, cortisol floods your system, you panic, you pace the room, you lose sleep, you catastrophize your entire future. Do you see the massive glitch in your system? Your brain is conflating a digital message with a literal predator. It literally cannot tell the biological difference between losing your job and losing your life. Your internal alarm system is entirely broken. It is ringing at a deafening, debilitating volume for a threat that does not actually exist. This is where the separation must happen. You have to wake up and realize that the physical sensation of fear does not equal actual danger. The panic you feel over an email is manufactured. The urgency to freak out is fake. When that notification comes in, your biology screams, "React." But you are not a slave to your biology. You have a choice. That's the key. Most people walking the streets today never realize they have a choice. They feel the panic and they immediately, mindlessly act on it. They fire off an emotional defensive reply. They break down in tears. They surrender their ultimate power to an outdated biological glitch. Not you, not anymore. You must learn to look at your emotions from the outside. When the anxiety hits, when the red-hot anger flares, when the sadness tries to swallow you whole, you do not let it drive the car. You rip it out of the driver's seat and you shove it into the passenger seat. You look at it and you say, "I see you. You are a biological suggestion, but you are not in charge." Because emotions are raw data, not directives. They are simply information. A spike in your heart rate is just data. A pit in your stomach is just data. And data is meant to be objectively analyzed, never blindly obeyed. So, how do we permanently dismantle this illusion?
You must cultivate a ruthless, unapologetic skepticism toward your own internal state. You must train yourself to aggressively stop trusting your first reactions. Your first reaction is almost always completely wrong. It is almost always an emotional defense mechanism trying to keep you safe and paralyzed inside your comfort zone. But if you want to achieve anything of significance in this world, your comfort zone must be destroyed. When a stressful event occurs, your prehistoric brain will demand immediate chaotic action. Deny it. Freeze the system. Aggressively question the impulse. Ask yourself out loud, is this a real, physical threat, or is my biology playing tricks on me? Force your logical brain to step in and audit the situation. Society will endlessly tell you to honor your feelings and listen to your heart. Society is weak. Society is full of people who are broke, miserable, and entirely controlled by their erratic impulses. You don't need their permission. You don't need their permission to be entirely rational. You don't need their permission to be stone cold when the situation demands fire. Let the masses drown in their endless emotional chaos. You are building a cognitive firewall. When others panic, you process. When others react, you calculate. It's not about suppressing your humanity, it's about mastering your execution. It's not about the feeling, it's about the discipline. Understand this absolute truth. You will never be able to fully stop the initial biological surge of an emotion. You cannot control the chemical dump of adrenaline that hits your bloodstream. That is purely biological. But you have absolute dictatorial control over what you do the exact second after that chemical dump happens. You dictate the response. You hold the line. The next time you feel deeply offended, the next time you feel terrified of failure, the next time you feel that desperate urge to act out of purely emotional pain, stop. Do nothing. Stand perfectly still in the raging storm of your own mind. Let the chemicals wash over you. They will always dissipate. And what is left behind when the floodwaters recede? Silence, clarity, absolute weaponized logic. In that profound silence, you regain your power. You look at the raw data. You chart the logical course. You execute the plan, because the plan is the only thing that actually matters. Your massive goals do not care if you are tired. Your life's ambitions do not care if you are scared. The market does not give a single damn about your anxiety. Real, tangible results require action, and action must be guided by logic, not the erratic, unstable weather of your internal feelings. Strip away the dramatic narrative. Strip away the victimhood. Look only at the undeniable facts. Remember the rule. Tattoo it on the inside of your mind. Emotions are raw data, not directives. You will test this today. You will be triggered today. Someone will say something disrespectful. Something in your schedule will go completely wrong. The prehistoric alarm in your head will sound, and you will smile, because you know it's just a false alarm. You will observe the data, you will dismiss the illusion, and you will proceed with cold, calculated intent. You have a choice. Make the right one. You are beginning to see the matrix for what it truly is. You are finally learning to master your own internal alarms. But mastering your internal alarms is only the first phase of this transformation, because once you stop letting your own emotions sabotage your success, you must turn your attention to an even greater external threat, the emotions of other people. Society praises endless compassion. Society demands your constant emotional investment in the endless struggles of everyone around you. But what if that compassion is a trap? What if your unchecked empathy is the exact mechanism keeping you broke, exhausted, and stalled out? You mastered your fear. Now, let's talk about the true currency of your life. Chapter 2. The Empathy Trap. How caring too much bankrupts your ambition. Society has fed you a massive, debilitating lie. They told you that endless empathy makes you a good person. They told you that bleeding for others is a badge of honor. It is not. Endless empathy is a liability. It is a bleeding wound in the middle of a shark tank. You have been conditioned to believe that giving away your energy, your time, and your mental bandwidth to anyone who asks is a high-level virtue. Wake up. Look at the people telling you this. Are they successful? Are they calm? Or are they exhausted, bitter, and completely devoid of personal boundaries? Unstructured, limitless empathy is not a virtue. It is a severe cognitive vulnerability. It makes you weak, predictable, and incredibly easy to control.
The rule for this chapter is absolute. Protect your peace, weaponize your focus. I need you to drill this into your skull until it becomes automatic. Protect your peace, weaponize your focus. When your empathy has no boundaries, you become an open bank vault with no security guards. And what happens to an unguarded vault? It gets looted. Every single day. There are people in this world who are professional victims. We call them emotional vampires. They do not want to fix their lives. They do not want solutions. They want to siphon the energy out of yours to fuel their endless, cyclical drama. They scan the room for the person who cares too much. They look for the person who feels deeply responsible for the feelings of everyone around them. And the second they find you, they latch on like a parasite. They drain your emotional resources, they consume your productive time, they bankrupt your ambition. And you let them do it, all because you think you're being a nice person. You have a choice. That's the key. You do not have to play this rigged game. Let's look at a brutal, undeniable real-world example. Imagine you were a dedicated professional gunning for a massive promotion. You are putting in the hours, you have the skills, you are disciplined, but you sit next to a coworker who is perpetually chaotic. They constantly miss deadlines, they complain endlessly about how unfair the system is, they play the victim. Every time they drop the ball, they look at you with manufactured panic in their eyes. They feed you a sob story about their personal life, their stress, their overwhelming workload. And your unstructured empathy kicks in. You feel a sudden pang of misplaced guilt. You feel bad for them. So, what do? You stay late to fix their sloppy mistakes. You essentially do their job and your job. You lie to yourself, thinking you're being a good team player. You think you're saving the day. But look at the raw data. Look at the actual devastating cost to your own life. You are exhausting yourself. You are missing your own gym sessions. You are neglecting your own family and personal goals. Your own high-level projects are suffering because your mental bandwidth is entirely consumed by someone else's incompetence. And when promotion time comes, the boss doesn't promote the exhausted, burnt-out martyr who is constantly putting out fires for other people. The boss promotes the sharp, focused operator who handled their own business flawlessly and moved the needle forward. By covering for someone else's laziness out of misplaced guilt, you have actively destroyed your own career trajectory. You let someone else's problems dictate your daily agenda. You bankrupted your own ambition to subsidize their failure.
This stops today. You must close the vault. You must implement a completely new, ruthless operating system. I call it calculated compassion. Calculated compassion means you only offer your help, your time, and your energy when it strictly aligns with your logic, your personal goals, and your absolute boundaries. It means you immediately stop being a dumping ground for the emotional garbage of others. You do not need to solve every problem that is presented to you. You are not the savior of the office. You are not the therapist for your toxic friend group. You don't need their permission to step back. You don't need their permission to say no. You don't need their permission to let them fail. Because sometimes letting people fail and hit rock bottom is the most logical, beneficial thing you can do for them and for yourself. It's not about cruelty, it's about discipline. Here is your real-world behavioral instruction. This is the transformation you must execute immediately. You must audit your relationships today. Identify the emotional vampires in your life. Identify the people who only call you when they need something, when they are in crisis, when they need a favor or someone to vent to. Cut their access. Drastically reduce their bandwidth. The next time they come to you with a manufactured emergency, you will not jump. You will force the pause we discussed. You will look at the situation coldly and objectively. You will ask yourself one defining question. Does engaging with this crisis serve my ultimate goals, or does it drain my resources? If it drains your resources, you decline. You say no. You do not over-explain. You do not offer a paragraph of pathetic apologies. You simply state your boundary and you hold the line. Protect your peace. Weaponize your focus. When you first start implementing calculated compassion, your biology will fight you. It will feel severely uncomfortable.
The guilt will spike. Your outdated evolutionary software will scream at you, trying to convince you that you are a bad, selfish person. Let it scream. Remember the foundational law from Chapter 1. Emotions are raw data, not directives. The guilt you feel when you finally say no to an emotional vampire is a manufactured illusion. It is a societal control mechanism designed to keep you compliant and useful to others. Ignore the guilt. Stand entirely firm in the cold logic of your decision. You must begin to view your mental energy as a multi-million-dollar investment portfolio. Would you hand the keys to your financial portfolio to a chaotic, complaining coworker? Would you let a toxic family member make unauthorized withdrawals from your retirement account whenever they felt sad? Absolutely not. Yet you do this every single day with your mental energy. Your focus is your highest currency. It is the only tool you have to build the empire you want. When you give it away to people who actively refuse to take responsibility for their own lives, you are committing financial suicide on a cognitive level. You have a choice. Every single day, you decide who gets access to your mind and your time. That's the key. Guard that access with absolute ferocity. The people who truly care about your success will respect your boundaries. The people who get angry at your boundaries are the exact vampires who were secretly benefiting from your lack of them. Let them be angry. Let them throw a tantrum. Let them walk away. You don't need their permission to fiercely protect your own life. It's not about isolation. It's about discipline. You have learned to stop the bleeding. You have learned to close the vault and protect your energy from the vampires who try to drain it passively. But what about the active threats? What about the people who don't just passively drain you, but actively, strategically try to manipulate you into submission? You fortified your mind against unstructured empathy. Now we must learn to spot the active attackers before they even strike. Chapter 3. Identify the infiltrator. Spotting manipulation in real time. You are under attack, not physically, but psychologically. Every single day, people are actively trying to bypass your cognitive firewall. They know a fundamental truth about you. If they give you time to think, you will see through their nonsense. If they give you space to process the raw data, you will say no. So, they must steal your time. They must manufacture a crisis. They must weaponize the clock. The infiltrator's greatest tool is a fake ticking bomb. If they can make you feel rushed, they own you. This brings us to the unbreakable law of Chapter 3. Memorize this. Burn it into your neural pathways. Urgency is the enemy of accuracy. I repeat, urgency is the enemy of accuracy. Why do manipulators rely so heavily on urgency? Because they understand human biology better than you do. They know about the prehistoric software we discussed in Chapter 1. If they can spike your adrenaline through sudden, intense pressure, they effectively shut down your prefrontal cortex, the logical, calculating part of your brain. They force you into a corner where your nervous system screams that you must act instantly to survive. But the survival threat is entirely fake. It is a fabricated timeline designed by an infiltrator to force a rapid, sloppy decision. You have a choice. That's the key. You do not have to accept their timeline. You do not have to play their game. Let's look at exactly how this plays out in the real world. Picture a high-pressure scenario. Maybe it's a car dealership, or maybe it's a toxic partner standing in your kitchen. The tactics are identical. They corner you. They speak slightly too fast, refusing to let you get a word in. They lean in, subtly invading your physical space to create a subconscious sense of being trapped. Then, they deploy the specific vocabulary of panic. This deal is only good for the next 10 minutes. If you actually cared about this relationship, you'd agree to this right now. I need an answer immediately, or the offer is gone forever. Look at the words. Look at the framing. It is a highly calculated script designed to trigger absolute panic in your system. What are they actually saying when they use those words? They are desperately saying, please do not process this information. Please do not look at the raw data. Because if you step back and look at the raw data, You will realize the car is massively overpriced. You will realize your partner's demand is completely irrational, disrespectful, and entirely self-serving. They inject guilt and urgency to short-circuit your logic. They want you to make a life-altering decision based on the fear of missing out or the fear of a massive argument. It's not about compromise, it's about control. It's not about their urgency, it's about your discipline. Your transformation begins the exact second you recognize this pattern. From this moment forward, you will view sudden external pressure as a massive, blazing red flag. Whenever someone demands an immediate answer to a complex or unreasonable request, you must instantly recognize that you are being played. The urgency is the tell. It is the footprint of the infiltrator. Urgency is the enemy of accuracy. So, what is your behavioral instruction? What do you actually do when you spot the infiltrator in real time? You deploy the ultimate counterweapon: silence. Dead, unwavering, heavy silence. When they make their unreasonable demand and tell you they need an answer right now, you look them dead in the eye and you say absolutely nothing. You let the uncomfortable silence linger. Manipulators absolutely hate silence. They rely on you feeling so awkward, so socially pressured by the quiet, that you rush to fill the void with compliance. They expect you to stumble, apologize, and surrender just to make the tension go away. Do not do it. Let the silence stretch until it becomes agonizing for them. You have a choice. That's the key. You can choose to be incredibly comfortable in the discomfort of others. You must stop rushing to comply just to make a situation feel nice. When you refuse to speak, you break their rhythm. You shatter the illusion of their manufactured crisis. You force them to sit in the awkward reality of their own manipulative behavior. If you must speak, you use one single unbreakable phrase: "I will think about it and give you my answer tomorrow." And then you physically step back. If they escalate, if they lose their temper and say, "No, I need to know right now," you look at them with cold, calculated indifference. You say, "If you need an answer right now, then the answer is no." Boom. The matrix is broken. The infiltrator is completely neutralized. You don't need their permission to walk away. You don't need their permission to demand 24 hours to process a decision. They will try to guilt you. They will call you stubborn. They will claim you are being unreasonable or cold. Let them. Let them throw their tantrum. Remember the law of the previous chapter. Protect your peace, weaponize your focus. Their guilt is a toll you do not have to pay. When you strip away the urgency, manipulators have absolutely no power over you. They are exposed as desperate magicians whose cheap tricks no longer work on you. It's not about avoiding conflict, it's about the discipline of dictating the terms of engagement. Urgency is the enemy of accuracy. You will never again make a permanent decision based on a temporary, manufactured panic. You will set the pace of your own life. If an opportunity is truly good, it will still be there tomorrow. If a relationship is truly healthy, it can survive a 24-hour pause. Anything that demands your immediate, unquestioning compliance is a trap. You are the architect of your reactions, and an architect never builds a foundation in a rush. You now know how to spot the infiltrator. You know how to identify the artificial timelines and the weaponized guilt they use to force your hand. You know how to recognize the biological trap being set for you. But recognizing the trap is only half the battle. When the trap springs, when the pressure hits your nervous system and your heart starts to pound, you need a flawless mechanical process to stop yourself from stepping into it. You need a system to physically and mentally sever the wire between their trigger and your reaction. You spotted the enemy. Now let's build the ultimate defense system.
Chapter 4. The Pause Protocol. Severing the Stimulus Response Wire. Most people walking the earth today are nothing more than biological puppets. Someone pulls a string and they dance. An event happens and they immediately react. There's zero gap between the trigger and the response. There's zero control. You have lived your entire life with a wire connecting what happens to you directly to what you do next. A short, highly volatile wire. When someone insults you, the wire sparks and you immediately fire back. When an obstacle appears, the wire sparks and you immediately panic. We are going to cut that wire today.
The greatest operators in the world know a secret that amateurs refuse to learn. The gap between a stimulus and your response is the only place where your destiny is actually decided. In the pause, you find your power. I want that phrase echoing in your mind every time your heart rate spikes. In the pause, you find your power. You have been conditioned by a weak society to value speed over strategy. You think a fast comeback makes you look strong. You think a quick reply proves you're attentive. You think an immediate decision proves you're decisive. You are wrong. Speed in the face of an emotional trigger is not a sign of intelligence. It is a sign of profound weakness. It means your outdated prehistoric software is fully running the show. When you react instantly to a stressor, you are feeding your emotional response the exact oxygen it needs to become a roaring fire. You are giving away your leverage. But when you delay, when you force a gap, you starve that fire. You suffocate the emotion. You have a choice. That's the key. You do not have to answer the second you are asked. You do not have to strike back the second you are provoked. Let's examine the devastating, permanent consequences of the immediate reaction. Think about the last time you received an infuriating text message or a deeply unfair email. What happened? Your biology betrayed you. Your chest tightened. Your vision narrowed. And in that state of manufactured biological panic, you typed out a brutal, emotionally charged, venomous response. You hit send. And in that fraction of a second, you lost. You handed the remote control of your emotional state to someone else. You created massive collateral damage that will take weeks, maybe months to clean up. You compromised your professional reputation or damaged a critical relationship, all because you could not sit still for 5 minutes. The same applies to your money and your resources. You see a flashy advertisement. You feel the sudden dopamine hit of desire. You click buy now. You just sacrificed your long-term financial freedom for a 3-second chemical rush. This is amateur behavior. This is how the masses stay broke, stressed, and easily manipulated.
This behavior stops right now. Here is your real-world behavioral instruction. You are going to implement the mandatory 24-hour hold. From this exact second forward, you will never again respond to an anger-inducing message in the same day. You receive a text that makes your blood boil, you lock your phone, and you walk away for 24 hours. You want to make a major, non-essential financial purchase? You wait 24 hours. People will demand your immediate attention. Infiltrators will pressure you for a rapid reply. You don't need their permission to take your time. You don't need their permission to step back and process the raw data. Watch what happens when you enforce this hold. The results are miraculous. 24 hours later, the anger evaporates. The desperate urge to buy completely disappears. The biological storm passes, and logic returns to its rightful place on the throne. You will look at the angry text message you drafted the night before. You will laugh at how pathetic it sounds, and you will delete it. You will send a cold, professional, highly calculated 2-sentence reply instead. You won the interaction because you won the pause. In the pause, you find your power. But I know what you were thinking. How do you enforce this pause in the heat of the exact moment, when someone is standing right in front of you, yelling, when your heart is pounding out of your chest and your biology is screaming for action? You cannot simply think your way out of a biological response. You must physically override it. You must master a tactical grounding technique. The exact second you feel the trigger, the moment you feel the heat rise in your neck or the pit form in your stomach, you do not speak a single word. You shut your mouth entirely. You plant both of your feet firmly on the floor. You press your toes into the ground to anchor yourself in physical reality. Then you inhale sharply through your nose for 4 seconds. You hold that breath in your lungs for 4 seconds. You exhale slowly through your mouth for 4 seconds. This is not some soft spiritual meditation. This is a brutal, tactical, biological reset. By forcing oxygen into your system slowly and rhythmically,
You are manually hacking your nervous system. You are sending a hardwired signal to your brain that the saber-toothed tiger does not exist. You are physically forcing the heart rate to drop. You are turning off the alarm system so that your logical brain can re-enter the driver's seat before a single regrettable word leaves your lips. It's not about suppressing emotion. It's about the discipline of timing. It's about refusing to go into battle when your weapons are completely misaligned. Every single time you successfully execute this physical reset, every time you refuse to speak during the adrenaline dump, you are severing the stimulus response wire. You are taking back your autonomy. You are proving to yourself and to the world that you cannot be baited. In the pause, you find your power. The pause is your shield. It deflects the urgency, the manipulation, and the biological panic that ruins most people's lives. But a shield is only used for defense. Once you have stopped the attack, once you have severed the wire and forced the pause, you must learn how to strike back. You must learn how to dismantle the problem permanently. You have secured your perimeter. Now it is time to build your weapon. Chapter 5. Logic as a Weapon. Rebuilding your cognitive firewall. You severed the wire. You forced the pause. Your biology is quiet. Now what? You are standing in the silence and you need a weapon. Your mind is currently a chaotic theater, projecting endless movies of disaster, judgment, and failure. You are filled with stories. Stories about what could go wrong. Stories about what people might say behind your back. Stories about your own inadequacy. You must eradicate these stories. You must rebuild your cognitive firewall, and the only material strong enough to construct an impenetrable mental state is absolute, unyielding logic. The primary argument of this entire system, the core of the rational matrix, is this: framing every single life decision in cold, binary, objective terms is the ultimate cure for anxiety. Anxiety is not a permanent condition. For the vast majority of people, it is simply an overactive imagination. It is the direct result of letting emotional narratives run completely wild. You must strip away the narrative. You must focus only on undeniable facts. When you do this, the fear evaporates. Memorize your new operating protocol. Say it until it replaces your heartbeat. Fact over feeling, every single time. I will say it again. Fact over feeling, every single time. When faced with a massive life choice, society tells you to consult your gut. Your gut is an organ designed for digesting food, not for mapping the complex trajectory of your future. You have a choice. That's the key. You can choose to live in the blurry, terrifying, unstable world of what if, or you can choose to live in the sharp, clean, undeniable world of what is. You don't need their permission to be entirely robotic in your decision-making. People will call you cold. People will call you unfeeling. They will say you lack spirit. Good. Let them drown in their emotional indecision. Let them stay paralyzed by their own ghost stories. It's not about being heartless. It's about the discipline of clarity. Let's apply this to a terrifying high-stakes scenario. Imagine you want to make a massive career leap. You want to leave a safe, miserable corporate job to start your own enterprise. The amateur advice is to follow your passion. That is terrible, bankrupt advice. Passion is an emotion. Passion fades the exact second the market crashes. Passion does not pay the mortgage, and passion does not secure capital. You do not analyze a career leap with passion. You construct a ruthless mathematical risk-reward matrix. You turn the terrifying unknown of the future into a simple equation. You look at the raw data. What is the exact capital required? $50,000. Fact. What is the runway? 6 months of living expenses saved. Fact. What is the current market demand for the service? Quantifiable data points. Fact. Then you look at the worst-case scenario. If you completely fail, if you lose all the capital, what happens? You brush off your resume and you get another corporate job. Fact. Suddenly, the monster hiding under the bed is just a set of numbers on a spreadsheet. The paralyzing terror evaporates. You replace the dramatic narrative of "what if my life is ruined" with a binary calculation. If the math works, you execute the plan. If the math fails, you do not execute. There is no drama. There is no hand-wringing. Fact over feeling, every single time. You must stop treating your life like a soap opera and start treating it like a boardroom. Here is your real-world behavioral instruction. This is exactly what you must do the next time you feel overwhelmed, paralyzed, or panicked by a complex situation. You will deploy the step-by-step auditing system. When the anxiety hits, you stop. You sit down with a physical pen and a piece of paper. Do not use a screen. You need the physical, tactile connection to the words. Draw a line directly down the middle of the page. On the left side, you write down every single thought currently swirling in your head about the situation. Dump it all onto the paper. Write down the fears, the paranoid assumptions, the insecurities, the what-ifs. Now you switch to the right side of the paper and you become the auditor. You look at the first bullet point on the left. You ask one question. Is this an undeniable, mathematically provable fact? If it relies on someone else's opinion, it is an assumption. Cross it out. Physically strike a heavy black line through it. If it predicts a future event that has not actually happened yet, it is a story. Cross it out. If it involves the phrase, "I feel like," it is an emotion. Cross it out. You physically strike a line through every single emotional assumption on that page. You are literally assassinating the anxiety. You are crossing the fear out of your reality. What is left when you finish this brutal audit? Usually, out of 20 terrifying thoughts, only 2 or 3 survive. Only 2 or 3 are actual, concrete facts. You only solve the facts. You completely ignore the rest. You execute on the reality and discard the illusion. Fact over feeling, every single time. You have a choice. You can let the imaginary monsters in your head dictate your actions, or you can turn the lights on and realize the room is empty. That's the key. When you turn the lights on with logic, the manipulation ends. You don't need their permission to be purely pragmatic. When your family tells you you are making a mistake, you don't argue with their emotional outbursts. You show them the math. And if they still refuse to understand, you turn your back and build your empire anyway. It's not about being arrogant. It's about the discipline of objective reality. You are no longer navigating by the erratic stars of your fleeting emotions. You have built a GPS system constructed entirely out of stone-cold logic. Your cognitive firewall is up and fully operational. The narratives bounce right off of it. You have learned to neutralize panic and replace it with math. But there is one specific emotion, heavily programmed into your system since birth, that operates like a Trojan horse. It sneaks past your logic by wearing the deceptive mask of morality. You built the firewall against fear. Now we must dismantle the exact mechanism that society and infiltrators use to keep you chained to obligations you never agreed to.
Chapter 6. Neutralizing the Guilt Mechanism. Listen to me. Of all the invisible chains holding you back, guilt is the heaviest. It is also the most fraudulent. You have been taught from the day you were born that guilt is your ultimate moral compass. You have been brainwashed into believing that if you feel guilty, you must inherently be doing something wrong. That is a lie. Guilt, in its modern application, is almost entirely a socially conditioned control tactic. It is a weapon. It is used by society, by your family, and by emotional infiltrators to keep you conforming to rules you never agreed to. They use it to keep you in the box, but you are breaking out of the box, so you must memorize this absolute truth. Guilt is a toll you do not have to pay. I will repeat it until it shatters your programming. Guilt is a toll you do not have to pay. You must understand the distinct difference between true remorse and manufactured guilt. If you steal a car or betray a profound trust, you should feel remorse. You violated objective, factual ethics. But that is not the guilt that is paralyzing your daily life. The guilt dragging you down is artificial. It is the guilt of saying no. It is the guilt of prioritizing your own sleep. It is the guilt of outgrowing the people around you. That guilt is not a moral failing. It is simply the friction of you breaking their unspoken rules. People install guilt buttons in your mind from childhood. They push those buttons whenever you step out of line, whenever you stop serving their needs. But you are the architect of your reactions now. You have a choice. You can let them push the button, or you can permanently disconnect the wire. Disconnect it. Let's look at the ultimate testing ground for this mechanism: family obligations.
specifically the holidays. The holidays are a massive breeding ground for toxic manufactured guilt. Imagine this scenario. Every single year, you are expected to travel across the country, drain your bank account, and spend a week sleeping in a house full of chaos, passive aggression, and profound disrespect. You hate it. It ruins your peace. It halts your momentum. It drains the exact financial and emotional resources you desperately need to build your own empire. But you go anyway. Why? Because the exact moment you think about staying home, the guilt mechanism triggers. Your mother sighs heavily on the phone. Your siblings send passive-aggressive texts about family sticking together. You fold. You sacrifice your peace to subsidize their toxic tradition. You have a choice. That's the key. You do not have to buy the ticket. This is where your transformation becomes tangible. This year, you are not going, and you are going to decline the invitation using the rational matrix protocol. Here is your real-world behavioral instruction. You will say no with zero apologies and zero explanation. Amateurs over-explain. Amateurs write 4 paragraphs of weak excuses about work or money or being too tired. The second you explain, you are negotiating. You are handing them the exact ammunition they need to shoot down your reasons. Do not negotiate your boundaries. You send one text or you speak one sentence. I will not be able to make it this year. Period. Full stop. No, I'm so sorry. No, maybe next time. Just the cold, objective fact. You don't need their permission to stay home. You don't need their permission to protect your financial runway. You don't need their permission to spend the week working on your own goals. It's not about being selfish. It's about the discipline of self-preservation.
Now brace yourself. When you execute this, the fallout will be immediate. The guilt will hit you like a biological tidal wave. The angry texts will come. The accusations will fly. They will call you arrogant. They will call you cold. This is where you must hold the line. You must learn to sit in the fire of their disappointment. Let them be angry. Let them be profoundly disappointed. It is completely fine. Disappointing someone else is always, without exception, preferable to abandoning your own goals. Disappointing them is a temporary social friction. Abandoning yourself is a permanent psychological scar. You must become incredibly comfortable with being the villain in someone else's fabricated narrative. Sit with the discomfort. Do not text back. Do not try to smooth it over. Let the silence do the heavy lifting. In the pause, you find your power. Guilt is a toll you do not have to pay. This dynamic does not just happen during the holidays. It happens every single day in the microtransactions of your life. A colleague asks you to grab a coffee so they can complain about their miserable marriage for an hour. You have deep work to do, but you feel guilty saying no, so you pay the toll. You give them your hour. An old friend from high school who has done nothing but stagnate for 10 years asks you to invest in their terrible business idea. You know it's a guaranteed loss, but you feel guilty. You don't want to look unsupportive, so you pay the toll. You give them your money. Stop paying the toll. Every time you act out of guilt, you are financing your own failure. You are taking bricks out of your own foundation to build a house for someone who refuses to buy their own cement. You have been programmed to believe that your highest purpose on this earth is to make sure nobody around you ever feels uncomfortable. That is a loser's philosophy. The truth is, your growth will inherently make stagnant people deeply uncomfortable. Your success will absolutely trigger their insecurities. Your boundaries will feel like a personal attack to people who have zero boundaries of their own. Let them be triggered. Let them feel attacked. That is their raw data to process, not yours. You are not responsible for their emotional regulation. You have a choice. That's the key. You can shrink yourself to keep them comfortable, or you can expand and let them deal with their own shadows. Let's reinforce the physical act of rejecting this emotion. When that guilt creeps up into your chest, when your throat tightens because you just set a hard boundary, you apply the same logic we discussed in the previous chapter. You audit the feeling. Ask yourself out loud, did I maliciously harm someone, or did I simply refuse to be used? If you simply refuse to be used, You strike a line through the guilt. You dismiss it entirely. You laugh at the absurdity of the biological glitch trying to control you. You don't need their permission to be uncompromising. It's not about arrogance, it's about the discipline of personal sovereignty. Guilt is the glue that holds the matrix together. It is the artificial gravity keeping you stuck on the ground. Once you neutralize this mechanism, once you truly realize that you do not owe anyone an apology for your ambition, you become weightless. You become untouchable. You are no longer easily manipulated because the leverage they used against you simply no longer exists. They reach for the guilt button and they find out you cut the wires. You have dismantled the emotional traps set by others. You have neutralized the guilt. You have built a cognitive firewall of pure logic. Your environment is finally secured, but an indestructible environment is completely meaningless if the engine driving you is fundamentally flawed. Society tells you to achieve greatness, you need to feel inspired. They tell you to wait for the spark. They are lying to you again. You mastered your external obligations, now let's talk about the engine of your internal execution.
Chapter 7. The Myth of Motivation. Why Discipline Laughs at Inspiration. Let's talk about the biggest scam in the modern self-help industry. Motivation. You have been sold a massive, debilitating lie. You have been told that you need to feel a spark before you can start. You have been brainwashed into believing that highly successful people wake up every single day overflowing with burning inspiration and passion. They do not. Motivation is a myth. It is a fairy tale for amateurs. It is the ultimate form of self-sabotage. If you are waiting to feel like it before you do the work, you will be waiting until you are dead. You must completely sever the connection between your feelings and your actions. This is the core law of human output. Memorize this. Burn it into your daily operating system. Action dictates emotion. Emotion does not dictate action. I'll say it again so there is absolutely zero confusion. Action dictates emotion. Emotion does not dictate action. Look at your own life. Look at the raw data. How many times have you skipped the gym because you were tired? How many times have you pushed off a major project because you didn't feel inspired? You were letting your biological glitches run your entire schedule. We established in Chapter 1 that emotions are raw data, not directives. So why are you letting the emotion of lethargy dictate your daily output? You have a choice. That's the key. You can choose to be a helpless slave to your fluctuating moods, or you can choose to be an unstoppable machine. You do not need to feel good to work hard. Let's look at the ultimate real-world example. Let's look at the elite athlete. It is 4 a.m. It is 30 degrees outside. It is pouring freezing rain. The alarm goes off in the dark. Do you honestly think that athlete wakes up and feels motivated to go run 10 miles in the freezing mud? Absolutely not. Their biology screams at them to stay in the warm bed. Their mind manufactures every logical excuse to hit the snooze button. They feel the exact same resistance that you do, but they get up anyway. Why? Because they do not negotiate with their feelings. They lace up their shoes, they open the door, they step into the freezing rain, they execute. Now look at the amateur. The amateur hears the exact same alarm. The amateur feels the exact same lethargy, but the amateur believes the myth of motivation. The amateur thinks, I don't feel the fire today. I'm just not inspired. I will wait until I feel motivated tomorrow. The amateur stays in bed. The amateur loses. Here's the secret the elite athlete knows, and the amateur refuses to accept. The motivation never comes before the work. The motivation arrives after the work has begun. You start running in the freezing rain, and 10 minutes later your blood is pumping. The endorphins hit. The fire ignites. The action created the emotion. Action dictates emotion. Emotion does not dictate action. When you sit down to build your business, the work feels clunky and exhausting. You push through. 20 minutes later, the rhythm hits. You find your flow. The action created the emotion.
Society romanticizes the spark. Movies show the protagonist having a sudden magical epiphany, a surge of power, and then they change their life overnight. That is fiction. Real life is built in the shadows. Real success is built in the boring, monotonous repetition of daily tasks. If you only work when you feel like it, you will work maybe 3 days a month. You cannot build an empire working 3 days a month. You must learn to find a deep, arrogant satisfaction in doing the work when you violently do not want to do it. That is where true, unbreakable confidence is born. Confidence is not a feeling. Confidence is a stack of undeniable proof that you kept your promises to yourself. You build that proof through cold, emotionless execution. You must stop relying on willpower. Willpower is a finite resource. It burns out by noon. You must build a life of systemic execution. Here is your behavioral blueprint. You must create non-negotiable daily routines. A non-negotiable routine means exactly what it sounds like. It is not up for debate. It is not subject to a daily emotional audit. You treat your daily habits with the same cold inevitability as gravity. You do not wake up and ask yourself if gravity is going to work today. You just know it will. You must treat your work the exact same way. Tomorrow morning, you will audit your tasks. You will not write down, feel motivated to work out. You will write down, put on shoes, walk outdoor. You make the barrier to entry entirely physical, completely devoid of any emotional requirement. When the alarm rings, you do not think. Thinking is the enemy of execution in the morning. Thinking introduces emotion. You just move. You become a robot. You flip the switch and the machine runs. A machine does not care if it is raining. A machine does not care if it is tired. It just executes its programming. The infiltrators in your life will tell you to take a break. They will say you are working too hard. They will tell you to rest and wait until you find your passion again. Ignore them entirely. You don't need their permission to be relentless. You don't need their permission to operate at a standard they simply cannot comprehend. It's not about motivation. It's about discipline. Your ultimate success is entirely reliant on your ability to perform at a high level when you feel absolutely miserable. Every time you execute without motivation, you are hammering another nail into the coffin of your old self. You are proving that your mind is the master and your body is the servant. You are building an indestructible engine. Action dictates emotion. Emotion does not dictate action. Do not wait for the spark. Become the fire through brute force. You have completely rewired your engine. You no longer wait for the mythical spark of inspiration. You dictate your own internal weather through relentless, emotionless action. You are a machine of execution. But even a perfect machine operates in an unpredictable world. You can execute flawlessly. You can do every single thing right, and the external world can still crash down around you. The market can tank, the deal can fall through. How do you survive that without breaking? You mastered your internal engine. Now, let's talk about mastering the chaos of the external world. Chapter 8. Detaching from Outcomes, the Stoic Superpower. Let's talk about your biggest point of failure. You've built a machine. You have cut out the emotional vampires. You have stopped waiting for motivation. You are executing daily, but you are still completely miserable. Why? Because you are tying your emotional stability to the scoreboard. You are working yourself to the bone, looking up at the crowd and begging them to clap. You are staring at your bank account, waiting for the numbers to validate your existence. This is an extreme, uncontrollable cognitive vulnerability. You are handing the keys to your mental state to complete strangers, to an unpredictable economy, to the chaotic weather of the external world. You must stop playing a game you cannot mathematically control. There is only one law of survival in an unpredictable world. Memorize it. Repeat it until it becomes your oxygen. Control the input, surrender the output. I will say it again. Control the input, surrender the output. Society tells you to manifest your outcomes. Society tells you to obsess over the finish line. That is a loser's game.
The outcome is not yours. The outcome belongs to the market. The outcome belongs to the algorithm. The outcome belongs to the chaotic, random variables of a planet with 8 billion other people operating on their own agendas. If your happiness is reliant on the exact result you planned for, you will spend your entire life violently swinging between temporary euphoria and devastating depression. You have a choice. You can live on that emotional roller coaster, or you can step off the ride entirely. You can choose to detach. Let's look at a brutal, undeniably real-world scenario. Let's look at the business owner. Imagine an entrepreneur who spends 6 months designing the perfect product. The marketing is flawless. The logistics are dialed in. The team is prepped. The launch sequence is a masterpiece of rational execution. They launch on a Tuesday morning. Everything on their end is perfect. But on that exact same Tuesday morning, a global geopolitical crisis hits. The stock market plunges. The news cycle is completely hijacked. Nobody buys the product. The launch is a catastrophic financial failure. How does the amateur react? The amateur breaks down. The amateur cries. The amateur feels like a complete failure. The amateur says, "I did everything right and I still lost. Life is unfair." The amateur quits. But how does the operator of the rational matrix react? The rational operator looks at the raw data. The operator reviews the launch metrics. Was the product excellent? Yes. Was the marketing sharp? Yes. Was the work ethic elite? Yes. The operator realizes that the failure had absolutely nothing to do with their internal execution. The operator shrugs. They met their internal standard. The external world threw a hurricane, but the house they built was structurally sound. They survived the storm because they focused purely on the bricks, not the weather. Control the input, surrender the output. You must train yourself to find a deep, almost arrogant satisfaction in simply doing things correctly. Your pride must come entirely from the flawless execution of the process, regardless of the applause or the money it generates. When you sit down and execute a perfect block of deep work, you win. It does not matter if the project gets canceled tomorrow. You did the work. You met the standard. That is your reward. You don't need their permission to be proud of your own execution. You don't need their permission to feel victorious in an empty room. When you detach from the outcome, you become psychologically bulletproof. You become completely immune to bad luck. Bad luck only destroys people who expect good luck to save them. You expect nothing. You only guarantee your input. If the input is perfect, failure becomes mathematically irrelevant. It simply becomes a data point. Ah, the market does not want this. I will adjust. There's no emotional sting. There is no shattered ego. There is only raw data and the next logical step. You have a choice. That's the key. You can let the external world dictate your value, or you can dictate your own value through relentless, uncompromising execution. Here is your real-world behavioral instruction. Starting today, you will completely stop talking about your goals. Stop talking about the $1 million you want to make. Stop talking about the promotion you want to get. You are entirely focused on the wrong side of the equation. You will only track your inputs. Did you make the 50 calls? Did you write the 10 pages? Did you execute the workout flawlessly? If the answer is yes, you are successful. The day is won. If the answer is no, you are a failure, even if someone hands you a check for $1 million by accident. Your internal standard is the only metric that exists. It's not about the reward, it's about the discipline. A true professional does not need a cheering section to perform at an elite level. They perform at an elite level because anything less is an insult to their own existence. People will look at you and wonder how you stay so calm when everything is collapsing around you. They will wonder how you can take massive, devastating losses and show up the next morning at 5 a.m. ready to work. They will think you are a machine. Let them think it. You are simply operating on a higher plane of logic. You know the secret they refuse to learn. The scoreboard is an illusion. The daily execution is the only reality. Control the input, surrender the output. Every time you feel the sting of rejection, every time a project fails, every time someone criticizes your work, repeat the phrase, control the input, surrender the output. Evaluate your input. If it was flawless, dismiss the criticism entirely. If it was flawed, fix the flaw. But never, ever let the outcome dictate your internal weather again. You have detached your ego from the chaotic swings of the external world. You have learned to operate in a state of stoic invincibility, focusing only on the flawless execution of your process. You are mentally shielded from the storm. But even with a perfect mindset, your physical body still has its own hardwired alarms. Sometimes, the pressure of reality bypasses your logic and hits your central nervous system directly. You know how to stop the mind from panicking, but how do you stop the physical body when it feels like you are having a heart attack? You master the external chaos. Now, let's talk about mastering your own biological machinery.
Chapter 9. The Anatomy of Panic. Disarming Anxiety with Biology. We have built the mental framework. We have established the logic. But you are still housed inside a physical body, and sometimes that body rebels. You know exactly what it feels like. Your chest tightens, your throat closes, your heart hammers against your ribs like it is trying to escape, your hands shake, the room spins. Society calls this a panic attack. Society tells you it means you are broken. Society tells you that you have a deep psychological flaw that requires years of unpacking and coddling. They are wrong. You are not broken. You are simply experiencing a massive, unmanaged chemical dump in your bloodstream. That is it. Your anxiety is not a ghost haunting your soul. It is a predictable, physiological response. It is a biological equation. And because it is biology, it can be hacked. It can be manually overridden. You must fundamentally change how you view your own physical vessel. Your biology is a machine. Learn to operate the controls. I need you to internalize this completely. Stop being a passive passenger in your own body. Your biology is a machine. Learn to operate the controls. When you feel panic, you instantly attach a dramatic story to it. You feel your heart race, and you tell yourself, I am failing, I am terrified, I am weak. The story makes the panic worse. The story signals the brain to release even more adrenaline. You are trapped in a biological feedback loop of your own creation. Break the loop. Demystify the feeling. When the heart races, it is just cortisol. It is just adrenaline. It is liquid chemistry, nothing more. It is not a moral failing. You have a choice. That's the key. You can choose to drown in the chemical flood, or you can choose to build a dam. Let's look at the ultimate high-stakes environment, the salary negotiation. You are sitting across the table from your boss or a massive client. You are about to ask for double your current rate. Everything is on the line. Suddenly, the prehistoric software activates. Your nervous system perceives the person across the desk as a lethal predator. Your fight or flight response triggers. Your heart rate skyrockets to 130 beats per minute. Your mouth goes completely dry. The amateur panics. The amateur believes the physical sensation is undeniable proof that they should back down. They stutter. They shrink in their chair. They drop their eye contact. They fold. They accept a terrible, insulting offer just to escape the physical discomfort of the room. But not you. You understand that your brain is just a reactionary organ. When your body acts like it is being hunted, your brain believes it is being hunted. So you must manually force your body to act like it is perfectly safe. You must send a physical signal of absolute dominance back up to your own nervous system. In that negotiation room, you do not run. You do not fidget. You do not shrink. You override the system. You sit back in your chair. You deliberately open your posture, exposing your chest and neck, the exact opposite of a defensive prehistoric crouch. You slow your breathing. You drop your shoulders. What happens next is pure biology. Your brain receives these physical signals of total relaxation. The brain gets confused. It says, wait, our posture is open, our breathing is slow, we must not be in danger. The brain physically shuts off the adrenaline valve. The heart rate drops. The panic dissolves. Logic returns to the driver's seat. You lean forward, look them dead in the eye, and you secure the deal. You don't need their permission to take up space. You don't need their permission to control the pacing of the room. When you master your physical responses, you master the environment. It's not about the anxiety, it's about the discipline. It's about the discipline of the manual override. Here's your real-world behavioral instruction. You are going to memorize the 60-second invisible reset. This is a physical protocol you can execute in any room, in any meeting, completely undetected by the people sitting right next to you. You will no longer fear panic attacks. You will view them as a minor system glitch to be quickly debugged. When the panic hits, execute step 1. Plant your feet flat on the floor. Press your heels down. Feel the solid ground. This physical sensation draws your focus out of your spinning head and forces it back into physical reality. Step 2. Drop your shoulders. When you panic, your shoulders unconsciously rise to protect your neck. It is a biological tell of submission. Force them down, let them hang heavy. Step 3. Shift your vision. Panic creates tunnel vision. It locks your eyes directly onto the perceived threat. Break the lock, soften your gaze, and consciously expand your peripheral vision to take in the far edges of the room. This visually triggers the parasympathetic nervous system, instantly signaling safety to the brain. Step 4. Tactical breathing. Inhale quietly through your nose for 4 seconds, pulling the air deep into your stomach, not your shallow chest. Hold the air for 2 seconds. Exhale slowly through your nose for 6 seconds. The extended exhale is the biological kill switch for adrenaline. It physically forces the heart to slow its rhythm. Do this sequence 3 times. It takes less than 60 seconds. The person sitting across from you will have absolutely no idea you just debugged a massive biological glitch. All they will see is a cold, unbothered, hyper-focused operator. Your biology is a machine. Learn to operate the controls. When you finally realize you can turn off your own panic like a light switch, the fear of fear disappears entirely. You no longer dread the physical symptoms of anxiety because you have the exact antidote sitting right in your back pocket. You are the master of your own chemistry. You dictate the heart rate. You dictate the breath. You dictate the outcome. Stop claiming you have anxiety as if it is a permanent, incurable disease. You experience temporary spikes in cortisol. That is the factual, rational truth. And you now have the exact tools to crush those spikes the precise second they appear. You have a choice. You can be the helpless victim of your own bloodstream, or you can be the undeniable architect of your physical state. You have conquered your emotional illusions. You have guarded your empathy. You have severed the stimulus response wire. You have built a cognitive firewall of pure logic. You have neutralized artificial guilt. You have destroyed the myth of motivation. You have detached from the chaos of outcomes. And now you have completely mastered the physical machinery of your own biology. You have acquired every single tool. You have built the rational matrix. But a system is only as strong as the operator who runs it permanently. How do you take these isolated tools and forge them into an unbreakable, lifelong operating system? How do you ensure that you never slide back into the weak emotional existence of the masses? You mastered your physical body. Now, let's talk about the final frontier. Chapter 10. The Sovereign Mind. Designing Your Indestructible Reality. You have acquired the tools. You have dismantled the illusions. You have learned to sever the wire, silence the guilt, and manually override your own biology. But tools are entirely useless if they are left sitting in the shed. A framework is completely meaningless if it is only applied when it is convenient. We have arrived at the final frontier. We are no longer talking about temporary fixes, morning routines, or situational tactics. We are talking about a permanent, irreversible shift in your fundamental identity. The final argument of the rational matrix is this: absolute, unapologetic emotional independence is the only authentic path to personal freedom. Until you reach this state, you are simply a prisoner in a slightly nicer cell. When nothing outside of you can change the weather inside of you, you have finally won the game of life. Memorize your final unbreakable law. You are the architect of your reactions. I will repeat it until it becomes the absolute foundation of your daily existence. You are the architect of your reactions. Look at the masses around you. They are emotional slaves. Their entire day is dictated by the unpredictable chaos of the external environment. If the sun shines and people are polite, they are happy. If the traffic is gridlocked and their boss is rude, their entire week is ruined. They let a 30-second news clip send them into a spiral of depression. They let a stranger's comment on the internet ruin their self-esteem. They are dead leaves blowing in the wind, completely and pathetically at the mercy of whatever weather the world decides to throw at them. You are no longer a leaf. You are the mountain. The wind blows, the rain falls, the lightning strikes, and the mountain does not move. The mountain does not care about the weather. You must become completely immune to the chaos around you. You have a choice. That's the key. You can continue to hand the remote control of your emotional state to complete strangers, or you can crush the remote into dust and claim ultimate sovereignty over your own mind. Let's paint the picture of the ultimate manifestation of the rational matrix in action. Imagine a massive, catastrophic crisis in your environment. Let's say it is a massive system failure at your company. Millions of dollars are vaporizing by the minute. Look at the room. People are screaming. Your colleagues are hyperventilating. The leadership is pointing fingers, slamming desks, and losing their minds. It is absolute, unchecked biological chaos. Now, look at you. You are standing perfectly still. You are completely unbothered. Your heart rate is at a resting 60 beats per minute. You have already executed the physical reset. You are not suppressing panic. The panic simply does not exist because you refuse to manufacture it. You look at the screaming room and you see nothing but raw data. You process the variables, you identify the structural failure, you locate the exit, you step forward, you completely ignore the noise, and you lead the terrified, emotional toddlers to safety. You execute the solution while they are still busy crying about the problem. Why can you do this? Because you know that panicking solves absolutely nothing. Because you know that the external crisis cannot touch your internal peace unless you explicitly open the door and invite it in. You don't need their permission to stay calm when they demand panic. You don't need their permission to be the only rational adult in a room full of emotional chaos. It's not about being cold, it's about the discipline of absolute sovereignty. When you reach this level of emotional independence, you become incredibly dangerous in the best way possible. You become completely unmanipulable. The emotional vampires and the infiltrators look at you and they realize their weapons have absolutely zero effect. Their manufactured urgency bounces off your dead silence. Their artificial guilt shatters against your stone-cold logic. They can scream, they can threaten, they can cry, and you simply watch them with calculated indifference. You are untouchable. You are the architect of your reactions. This cannot be a temporary state. This must be your new permanent reality. Here is your final real-world behavioral instruction. You must completely stop viewing this system as a 30-day challenge or a temporary self-help experiment. You must adopt it as a militant lifestyle. Every single morning, before your feet hit the floor, you wake up and you explicitly declare your sovereignty. You look in the mirror and you remind yourself that you exclusively own the rights to your own mind. When you walk out the front door, you expect the world to be chaotic. You expect people to be irrational. You expect the market to be violently unpredictable. And you decide, before any of it even happens, that absolutely none of it will dictate your internal state. You set your own internal weather at 5 a.m., and you hold that climate until you go to sleep. Furthermore, you must conduct a ruthless nightly audit. Every evening you look back at your day and you ask yourself, where did I slip? Where did I let someone else dictate my emotional state? Where did I react instead of pausing? When you find the leak, you patch it with logic.
You learn from the raw data, and you promise yourself you will not make the same amateur mistake tomorrow. You must ruthlessly cut out any lingering participation in drama. If your peer group is gossiping, you stand up and walk away. If your family is catastrophizing over dinner, you stay entirely silent. You no longer speak the pathetic language of victims. You only speak the precise language of operators. You have a choice. You can slide back into the warm, comfortable, miserable sludge of the emotional masses, or you can stand alone at the top. That's the key. Excellence is incredibly lonely, but it is the exact place where true, undeniable freedom exists. You are no longer reacting to life. You are commanding it. You are stepping into a new echelon of high performers who operate entirely above the noise. You are the architect of your reactions. Never let someone else hold the blueprint to your mind. Never let a chaotic, undisciplined environment design your internal peace. The framework is built. The firewall is operational. You have dismantled the emotional triggers with absolute logic. You have stepped out of the matrix of manipulation and into the fortress of your own mind. You mastered your fear. You protected your focus. You neutralized the guilt. You disconnected the wire. You found your absolute power in the pause. Now the blueprint is yours to execute forever. You have reached the end of the matrix, but this is exactly where your real work begins. The tools have been handed to you. The firewall is built. From this exact moment forward, every time your heart races, every time unwarranted guilt creeps in, every time someone demands your immediate chaotic reaction, you will remember the protocol. You will pause, you will isolate the trigger, and you will neutralize the threat with absolute, unbreakable logic. You are no longer driven by the whims of your biology. You are no longer a puppet to the manipulations of others. Fact over feeling, action over anxiety, logic over everything. Now, hear me closely. In the next 24 hours, someone or something will try to trigger you. Let them try. Smile, step back, and dismantle their strategy with stone-cold reason. Welcome to the top. Now get to work.